this video finds you well and that you are ready for some chill. So I'm going to dive right on in and just explain a little bit about why we're doing this, how it could potentially help you, and everything you need to know. So when we think about being calm, we might picture tranquil lakes, serene scenes and babbling streams and sunsets and sunrises and all those wonderful things. And there's definitely a huge element of calm in that when we think about it. I'm also thinking about, have you ever seen anyone waiting or serving in a restaurant or cafe and they've got they're holding a million things. They're like the ultimate picture of serenity. It feels like they're almost juggling plates, and yet it's like this kind of, it's like a dance. It's just effortlessly, and I feel like they're in flow. They're in perfect harmony with all the things that they've got to do and that they're holding. And when I think about that to me is the ultimate calm, because despite the stuff going on, there's just a down the line where they're like, I've got it. I mean, I've not asked any of these people what's going on in your head, but as a vision of calm, I feel like that really, really stands out to me. And it's funny because, I often find this in my vocal coaching as well, where I describe that, learning to sing and singing is like having a load of spinning plates all going at once. And often the amount of times people say to me, oh, I started focusing more on my breathing and then I forgot to do this. And it's that thing of when you're watching one plate so acutely, the other plate drops. And so that's why I think that vision of the person in the restaurant or a cafe is so calm, because it's regardless of how much they're holding, there's that sense of harmony and flow. Now, bringing this back to ourselves, I'm well aware that there's many outstanding circumstances and external influences that of course affect our calm. And if you think about that plate analogy, it's like someone just suddenly, knocking one out plate completely out of the blue, someone bumping into you, and whoa. So regardless of how calm, how zen you are, external things will happen. So none of this is to suggest that oh, you should just be unaffected by everything, just be calm about it. I'm well aware that everyone's circumstances are completely different, and none of this is to sort of preach or suggest that there is you should just be like this, or any kind of judgment on where you're at. These are things that are kind of little tips and reminders of things, especially when we are feeling a little bit wayward or stressy. I like to have those sort of go-to things that I can kind of pick up and remind myself. So the same way that someone might bash into you or knock one of your plates out your hand unexpectedly, we can do the same thing just by giving a little more attention, a little more care to any one of those plates. Okay, so how this is going to work and how this came to be. Now, with my vocal coaching, I often break things down into sort of a few main dishes, a few main plates, specials, shall we say. The main course is specials today. I found this to be really, really useful because I found there to be lots of contributing factors, lots of things to learn. Whenever you start anything new, it can be like an avalanche of things to learn. But if you can see in front of you that there's a few main areas, a few main things to consider, it helps you have that sort of focus or know where you're at and how one might affect the other. It's kind of like a little guide map, but it's broad enough that if your circumstances change, you can do things just to enhance or influence without it being so specific or focused on one specific area. So when it comes to our sense of calm, our main dishes, our main plates are mind, body, breath, voice, heart, and life. Now you're probably thinking, well, for a lot of those, they already exist in your body. And life, well, that's super broad. I need to have all those things to be in life. I totally agree, but it'll all make sense as we go along. And how this will work is that each day I will give you a tip or something to try from one of those areas that will hopefully positively impact your sense of calm. So since this is day one and our first dish is our mind. I'm going to start super duper simple today with something that's really, really effective. And I'm sure you've all done this before in some way or other, maybe without even realizing it. But I just want to bring some conscious attention to what our minds are doing. Now, all of the things that I mentioned earlier, you know, with the mind, body, breath, voice, they all have a way in terms of influencing your calm. So if you thought about them in a circle, you could pick one of them at any point in the circle and make a positive change, and just to ever so slightly tip things more in your favour. So if things have been feeling a little bit unbalanced and you kind of feel like you're doing this a lot of the time, it might actually be like, that's just what I needed. So starting with our mind means that we start to get a little bit more clear, a little bit more perspective of where we're actually at. But equally, you can do the same thing with any of the parts. So I could look at how I'm breathing, I could look at how my body actually feels, I could look about the way that I'm using my voice and whether I'm feeling fully expressed, and from a heart perspective, whether I'm doing things that emotionally drive me, those sorts of things. So there's always a way in. This happens to be day one, but it doesn't necessarily mean, you know, you've got to start here. So it's kind of fun, it's like a pick and mix. With today, we're going to start to notice. Now this is something which I consider in more depth in my course coming up in the new year. But for now, well, let's start super duper simple. And all I want you to do is just start to have little checkpoints in the day where you notice where your mind is at. So, you know, if you found that it's hard to pin down what you were thinking because there might be sort of really quick consecutive thoughts, that's absolutely fine. You can also do it the other way, in that you can notice, oh, my thoughts are running and I'm going to choose to actively think this instead. So kind of replacing like that. Now that's not about suppressing or ignoring anything that's present, but it's just kind of putting a little pause for a second and giving you the opportunity to go, oh, okay. Now one of the things about stopping to notice how you're feeling is that we might forget, especially if you've got a busy day and you're very much in the habit of being go, 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 do. Or you kind of just you might live with a lot of people, you might have a big family, you might have a long to-do list, you might have a job which has really, really, really long hours. So it's considerate of all people. What you could do is you could either set like a little alarm or timer or reminder where you just have those little check-ins, and it doesn't need to be sort of every 5 minutes, but even if you do, you sort of morning check-in, maybe a lunchtime and an evening, setting those little alarms or reminders. And what I want you to do is notice what you're thinking, how you're feeling, and name it. So for example, you might notice that your heart is racing, that there's a sense of stress, and then you could name the fact that, oh, I'm stressing. And that's that kind of thing. So by doing that, you're just starting to bring a little bit of awareness to where your mind is at. And like I say, you can do it the other way as well. You could notice, oh, my thoughts are racing completely, you know, don't even know how to pin down one particular thought. And then you could just name a new thought or name how that makes you feel. And that's all we need to do for today. Don't worry about like going into analysis or ruminating. If anything, I want you to avoid that analysis. It's just the simple act of actually taking a moment just to notice and to name is going to be really, really useful for you. Woohoo! So that's day one of our 12 days of calmness. So we've started with our mind today, and you're just going to spend a little bit of time noticing where your mind, where your head is at, and bringing a little bit of clarity just from that, taking an opportunity to stop and notice what you're feeling. I hope that's been helpful, and I look forward to seeing you